You just felt the thump of your heart, twice in the span of a single blink. What if I told you those beats didn't start because a big boss in your brain sent a command, but because the heart talked to itself first? The rhythm you hear isn't a reflex. It's a self-generated electrical storm that decides when to fire, before any nerve even knows you exist. Inside the chest of every 16-year-old lies a tiny, constantly flashing circuit board, and if you understand its secret handshake, you'll see why the phrase "follow your heart" is more literal than poetic. In the next 8 minutes, I'll peel back the layers of that hidden code, from the first spark in the sinoatrial node to the subtle feedback loops that keep the whole system in sync. Most textbooks say the brain's vagus nerve tells the heart to slow down and the sympathetic ganglia tell it to speed up. That story makes sense. After all, the nervous system governs every organ. But it's only half the picture. The heart can keep a perfect rhythm for days when all the nerves are cut, as shown in the classic 1950s Langendorf heart perfusion experiments. If nerves aren't the driver, why do doctors still focus on heart rate variability as a proxy for stress? The missing piece is an autonomous electrical engine that not only sets the pace, but also constantly rewrites its own script based on pressure, stretch, and even the blood's chemistry. Ignoring that is like trying to predict a city's traffic by only looking at the mayor's orders. The heart's first beat originates in a cluster of two 500-plus cells perched at the roof of the right atrium, the sinoatrial node, SA node. These cells are not ordinary muscle. They are automaticity specialists, expressing a unique mix of ion channels, primarily HCN4, hyperpolarization-activated cyclic nucleotide-gated channels that let sodium leak in even when the membrane is at rest. Each leak nudges the membrane potential up by about 0.02 MV per millisecond. When the voltage reaches roughly minus 40 MV, a rapid influx of calcium through T-type channels triggers a full-blown action potential. In a 2019 Nature Communications paper, researchers measured that this diastolic depolarization takes an average of 120 milliseconds in healthy adults, setting a baseline of 60 to 100 beats per minute without any external input. But the SA node isn't a single spark plug, it's a wavefront that propagates outward, recruiting neighboring atrial myocytes in a coordinated cascade. The spread is slower than in the ventricles because atrial tissue has a higher resistance, ensuring the impulse reaches the AV node just in time to be timed, not rushed. Did you know the average human heart fires about 2.5 billion times in a lifetime? That's more than the total number of smartphones ever sold. Yet the SA node's cellular battery never runs out because each beat is powered by the electrochemical gradients maintained by the Na/KT pump, which consumes roughly 8% of the body's resting oxygen, more than the brain's 20% share when you factor in the heart's constant demand. Once the impulse reaches the atrioventricular AV node, it hits a deliberate bottleneck. The AV node cells have a much slower upstroke because they rely on L-type calcium channels instead of the fast sodium channels seen in ventricular muscle. This creates a built-in pause of about 50 to 70 milliseconds, giving the ventricles time to fill with blood. If that pause vanished, the ventricles would eject before they're adequately loaded, slashing cardiac output by up to 30% according to a 2020 Journal of the American College of Cardiology simulation study. The AV node's gatekeeper function is fine-tuned by connexin 4.0 and connexin 4.3 gap junction proteins, which regulate how quickly ions spread between cells. Beyond timing, the AV node also filters out premature atrial beats, acting like a spam filter for electrical noise. When a rogue ectopic focus fires, the AV node's refractory period can block the impulse, preventing a dangerous tachyarrhythmia. Dr. Anna Miller, electrophysiologist at Stanford, told me in a 2021 interview, the AV node is the heart's built-in safety net. Without that milliseconds-long delay, everyday stress could become a life-threatening cascade. After the AV node, the signal races down the bundle of His, splits into the left and right bundle branches, and fans out through the Purkinje fibers. These fibers are the highway of the heart, myelinated like cells that conduct at up to 4 meters per second, a speed 20 times faster than atrial tissue. Fast conduction ensures the ventricles contract almost simultaneously, producing the sharp lube of the first heart sound, S. The synchrony is essential. Even a 10 milliseconds delay between the septal and lateral walls can reduce ejection fraction by 5%, as demonstrated in a 2018 circulation research echocardiography study. The Purkinje system also houses reserve pacemaker cells that can take over if the SA node fails, a phenomenon called an idioventricular rhythm, often seen after a heart attack. Those backup cells rely heavily on sodium-late currents, INL, a subtle current first described in a 2017 Journal of Physiology paper. Astronauts in microgravity experience a 15% reduction in Purkinje fiber conduction velocity after just 2 weeks in space. NASA, 2018. The loss of gravity-induced stretch alters the expression of the NaV 1.5 channel, reminding us that the heart's electrical map is exquisitely sensitive to mechanical cues. While the intrinsic circuitry creates the baseline rhythm, the nervous system fine-tunes it through 2 opposing pathways. The sympathetic fibers release norepinephrine, binding beta-adrenergic receptors, and increasing calcium influx via L-type channels, which can raise heart rate by up to 40% in a stress test. American Heart Association, 2022. Conversely, the parasympathetic vagus nerve releases acetylcholine, activating muscarinic M2 receptors that open potassium channels, H, hyperpolarizing the membrane and slowing the pacemaker slope. The baroreceptor reflex, stretch receptors in the carotid sinus, detects blood pressure changes within 200 milliseconds and adjusts vagal tone accordingly. A 2019 Nature Medicine study showed that heart rate variability, HRV, is not merely a stress marker but a real-time readout of this tug-of-war. People with high HRV have a more responsive SA node, able to shift the diastolic depolarization rate by plus or minus 0.03 mV/ms, translating to a plus or minus 15 BPM flexibility range. Only 8% of the population naturally maintains a resting heart rate below 60 BPM without training. Yet those individuals have a 30% lower risk of sudden cardiac death, according to a 2022 European Heart Journal cohort of 1.2 million people. But here's what almost nobody talks about. The heart's electrical rhythm is constantly listening to the body's mechanical state through stretch-activated ion channels, especially the piezo-1 and TREK1 channels embedded in the cardiomyocyte membrane. When the ventricles fill, these channels open, letting sodium and potassium flow in a way that subtly shortens the SA node's diastolic depolarization. In other words, the heartbeat is a two-way conversation. Electrical signals drive contraction, and the resulting stretch feeds back to reshape the next beat. A 2021 Cell paper demonstrated that blocking piezo-1 in mice blunted the normal increase in heart rate during exercise by 25%, even though sympathetic tone was unchanged. This mechanosensory feedback is the hidden layer that explains why heart rate variability drops during prolonged bed rest, why elite athletes can fine-tune their rhythm through breathing, and why heart failure patients often exhibit electrical remodeling that precedes structural failure. It's the secret sauce that makes the heart more than a pump. It's a living sensor. Understanding this mechanoelectrical loop is already